Hello my friends, and welcome back to The Long Night. A special welcome to those of you who are new here. Though the night might be long, dark, and scary, we will get through it together to see the sun rise. In this episode, I will be sharing with you another frightening, disturbing, and allegedly true Bigfoot or Yowie sighting report which was submitted by a viewer. If you have a story that you would like to share in a future episode, please submit it to my email, thelongnightmailbag @gmail.com, which is also contained in the description box below. I would love to share your story with everyone here on the channel. Anyway, moonlight is burning guys, so let's get into these sightings. I will narrate them to you, and then discuss them at the end of the video. Please check out the timestamps in the description box for more information. This sighting took place in the early 2000s at a location called Porcupine Gorge, which is located 60 kilometers to the north of Hughenden in Western Queensland. The sighting was made by a woman named Emily who was camping in the area with 3 of her friends. Okay, let's go. On an inconspicuous winter's day in the early part of the millennium, 4 friends hiked into the depths of Porcupine Gorge. The friends, who were named Emily, Lucy, Jade, and Billy, were enjoying their mid-semester break from university and decided to spend some time enjoying the cornucopia of sights and sounds the western expanses of the great state of Queensland had to offer. The oppressive heat had them longing for the cool embrace of the concealed creek that flowed through its depths. They were overheated from setting up camp and devised a solution. Their plan, a refreshing swim in the clear, shaded dappled water, a welcome respite from the arid and harsh landscape. Emily, who was quite the adventurous spirit, led the way, eager to plunge into the promised oasis. Such was her excitement, she bounded ahead of the other 3, out of direct eyesight. Rounding a bend in the trail, Emily came to a sudden halt, her blood turning to ice. On a large rock beside a stagnant pool sat a person unlike anyone she had ever imagined. At this point in time, her mind was thinking that the individual was a human. The hairy and uncouth individual was covered in coarse, reddish-brown hair. Its long and powerful body rippled with unseen muscles. Unseen, because it was wearing an ill-fitted garment. Its head and left arm was poking through the sleeve of a black t-shirt, with its right shoulder exposed. It resembled a disheveled person who possessed a faint notion of how to wear clothing correctly. It lowered its hands to the water, cupping them and drawing them back to its mouth to drink. A wave of primal fear washed over Emily. The whole scene disturbed her immensely. From nearly 200 meters away, this person's presence sent shivers down her spine. She felt like prey. Something instinctive told her to stop moving. Emily's mind raced to try and process what she was witnessing. A homeless person, perhaps? It didn't take long for her rationale and for her very paradigm of reality to shift as it turned around to face her in an eerie moment of intuition. The fiend's head snapped around, its gaze locking onto hers with a predatory gleam. Its face was devoid of hair and carried a malicious appearance. Its eyes were large and dark, nose flat and broad. A guttural growl erupted from its throat, shattering the peaceful ambience of a gorge. It leapt to its feet in a single fluid motion, its powerful legs propelling it forward with astonishing speed. In a blur of hair and muscle, it disappeared into the thick undergrowth of the adjacent bush, the shirt violently flapping in the wind, leaving behind only the fading echo of its growl and a chilling silence. Emily stood frozen, her heart pounding against her ribs. Her friends, rounding the bend just moments later and disquieted by the howl, saw the stark terror etched on her face. They followed her gaze to the spot where the creature had vanished, the air thick with disbelief and a burgeoning fear. Emily tried her best to describe what she had seen to her friends. She wasn't sure what scared her more, the fact that it had eloped away on all fours, covering 100 meters in no more than 3 seconds, or that it was wearing an X-Files t-shirt. The stories that they had heard, the tales of the Yowie, the hairy man, the elusive creature said to roam the Australian wilderness, suddenly seemed a little too real. Though they had dismissed them as mere folklore, the encounter had shattered their illusion. Now, standing in the shadow of the unknown, they were forced to confront the disturbing reality. The initial shock gave way to a gnawing unease. Their plans for a refreshing swim were abandoned, replaced by a shared anxiety. The light-hearted laughter that had filled their hike was replaced by hushed whispers and nervous glances. They decided to return to their camp immediately. After a couple of hours of resting and relaxing, a sense of normalcy returned to the group. The friends started reminiscing and laughing, even if it was punctuated by moments of nervousness. They decided to make a fire that night, larger than usual. The reason behind this wasn't discussed, but rather inferred by all members of the party. As they were preparing their supper for the night, they were approached by a large man and a petite woman. They announced their approach and introduced themselves as Dave and Samantha. Their youthful faces, lashed with hues of red and orange by the fire, were belied by some unspoken terror. Dave stated that they had set up their camp on the far side of the grounds and weren't sure whether anyone else was staying in the area. Emily recounted that Dave was holding his hands together and Samantha barely spoke. Both were quite austere. Dave asked how long they planned on camping in the area for. They responded that they intended to stay for a few more nights. Dave looked at the dry calcrete soil and nodded slowly. He raised his head and told them to keep an eye out. He stated that there was a clan of Aboriginals living in the area and that they were stealing belongings from him and Samantha. Samantha gripped Dave's hand. He paused for a moment. Dave looked at Samantha, whispered something, and continued his story. Dave told them that they were returning to their camp at sunrise, following a pre-dawn hike, when they witnessed a tall, lean Aboriginal teenager bolt from their tent. They interrupted him as he was attempting to put on one of Dave's shirts. As the Aboriginal teenager bounded into the bush, they saw another two figures, watching them from the tree line. He described the figures as enormous and dark. Within a few moments, all three of the Aboriginals descended further into the woods and out of sight. Emily asked if they had taken anything else from them. Dave replied that the teenager had opened some bags of food inside their tent, and that they were also missing a few Polaroids from their instant camera. He stated that, strangely, the teenager had only taken images containing himself and Samantha. Samantha was now tugging at Dave's arm, and he announced that they were leaving the area immediately. As Dave and Samantha turned to depart, Emily asked one final question. She queried as to whether the teenager ran from the tent on two legs or on all fours. Dave shot back around to face Emily, and the two had a moment of silent understanding. Dave replied that it was on all fours, like a dog. And with that, he turned around and the pair departed. Emily and her friends continued their supper preparations in subdued tones. As the dead of night descended, after the friends had retired to their tents, the eerie silence of the gorge was shattered by a series of long, menacing howls that resonated through the canyons. Each mournful cry pierced their hearts, sending tremors of fear down their spines. Sleep was a distant hope, replaced by a constant vigil against the unseen dangers that lurked in the darkness. Emily gripped her pillow and descended into her sleeping bag as far as she could go. She regretted not deciding to share a tent with her friends. The next morning, under the relative safety of direct sunlight and with a shared sense of urgency, they packed their belongings, opting not to discuss the vocalizations of the previous night. The joy and anticipation that had brought them to Porcupine Gorge had been replaced by a deep-seated fear. They had come seeking adventure but had encountered something far beyond their expectations. As they packed their vehicle, they shared a sensation of being watched from the woods. As Emily was packing her tent into its bag, her foot stirred something in the loose dirt. Small, rectangular, shimmering in the morning light. She flicked the artifact clear of dust and shrieked at the visage of the young man and woman smiling at her in the photograph. It was Dave and Samantha. Shocked by the scream, her friends came rushing over, but the ability to speak had abandoned her. All she could muster was to raise her arm in a slight point at the ground where the horrible photo now rested. Her friends gathered around the image, and the same grim realization which had devoured Emily consumed them in turn. They hurriedly packed the remainder of their belongings and absconded from the gorge, consigning this episode to rarely proffered moments of vulnerability and trauma. The memory of that day, the shadows that danced in the gorge, would forever remain a haunting reminder of the group's brush with the unknown, of something ancient and terrible that few people are lucky enough to bear horrible and harried witness to. Hi, back to me again. The encounter of Emily, Lucy, Jade, and Billy at Porcupine Gorge serves as a chilling testament to the existence of the Yowie, a creature shrouded in mystery and legend. Their experience devoid of any embellishments and delivered with the raw honesty of true fear provides a unique window into the terrifying reality of these enigmatic beings. The Pentland region in the White Mountains National Park between Townsville and Hughenden is considered a Yowie hotspot among truck drivers. Many truckies avoid sleeping in the area overnight due to the abundance of sightings. One of these sightings was reported by Steve Webb on the 28th of December 2022. I will read you his excerpt posted on YowieSightings.com. Steve was driving his rig over the Burra Range and decided to check his rig. Around 1 a.m, he pulled over and jumped out of his rig with his torch and walked around the truck checking the tires. Near the back of the truck, he heard the bushes moving, like something was moving through them. He turned and shone his torch through the bushes and heard a fair commotion by the roadside. He shone the torch in the direction of the noises and sighted a massive hairy creature running on all fours across the road into the bush on the other side and out of sight. Steve even produced a sketch of the creature he sighted, which I will display on the screen now. In an article written by Alf Wilson on the 28th of September 2021 and posted on bigrigs.com.au, Alf wrote that many truck drivers he interviewed refused to stop in the Pentland or White Mountain area for a bathroom break and never sleep there overnight. The only other information I could find on Yowie sightings in the area came from a website called Science Blogs, where a user named Billy Bob wrote on the 26th of January 2010 that he was visiting the Porcupine Gorge area with his girlfriend. His girlfriend went to use a toilet facility in the park and Billy Bob stayed behind to observe a mob of kangaroos in the distance. Whilst observing the mob, he was overcome by a primordial sense of fear and dread. So palpable was this feeling that Billy Bob decided to retrieve his .303 Lee Enfield rifle from the back of his truck. Whilst he was in the process of grabbing the weapon, his girlfriend returned. He decided not to mention his sensation of dread and they quickly left the area. Upon driving away, he calmed down and a sense of normalcy returned. Upon arriving at a nearby campsite, Billy Bob asked a clerk in the office at the campgrounds if they had Yowies out near Porcupine Gorge. The clerk responded, "Oh God, yes. The place is infested with them out there. A lady nearly ran one over last week." I have posted the link to this page in the video description where you can read Billy Bob's accounts, among others. So there is anecdotal evidence to suggest that Yowies do inhabit Porcupine Gorge and the surrounding area. Let's now discuss the sighting proper. The initial shock of the sighting is palpable. Emily's immediate reaction, the primal fear that froze her blood, despite the distance, speaks volumes about the Yowie's powerful presence. Her description of the creature, its coarse reddish-brown hair, the rippling muscles, and the malicious, hairless face, aligns perfectly with long-standing Yowie lore. An interesting detail to Emily's report was that the creature was spotted whilst wearing a t-shirt. I have read a few reports where Yowies or Bigfoot have adorned themselves with articles of clothing. The reason for them doing so is unknown, considering the creatures do not require clothing to survive in the elements, hence their naturally hairy demeanor. Perhaps a display of peacocking in the same vein that a person wears an ornate suit to a nightclub, or maybe this particular Yowie prided itself on the fact that it could infiltrate a place where humans were habituating and took the clothing as a trophy. Nevertheless, it remains an intriguing and disturbing detail to this report. The speed at which the Yowie retreated from the rock upon which it was standing is not unusual. Many researchers estimate that these creatures can reach speeds of 30 miles per hour or 48 kilometers per hour. On page 84 of the Sasquatch Awareness Project, researcher Scott Carpenter writes, "These beings are not dumb animals. They run 30 miles per hour, so quick and fast on the move that you can't believe your eyes." From page 41 of the Nephilim Among Us, Scott writes, "In February of 2014, I surprised a Bigfoot that had apparently miscalculated, allowing me to catch it out in the open. The weather had turned warm, so I ventured out for a short hike in the national park. With plans to meet my mother for dinner later that evening, I had lost track of time, realizing I was late while still on the top of the mountain. Wasting no time coming down off the mountain, I was moving at a very fast pace down the trail when I came upon a blind curve. Rounding the blind curve in the trail, a black figure caught my eye, on top of the ridge above me, on my right. The figure resembled a bear at first glance. It was dark, black, and moving through the thick vegetation. Stopping for a clear look, my attention was drawn to the fact that this bear was walking on two legs. Immediately, I recognized the identity of this black creature walking on two legs. It was a Bigfoot. Apparently, I had surprised it, catching it out in the open. The creature most likely misjudged my pace. Rounding the blind corner before it had a chance to hide, it was exposed. Alternatively, the possibility exists the creature allowed me to overtake it. The Bigfoot was facing in my direction, shuffling from my right to left toward a stand of thick underbrush. This was a very odd sight. While sidestepping slowly, the Bigfoot kept its shoulders and head facing in my direction. When I brought the camera up to my eye, the Bigfoot immediately squatted down in the underbrush, assuming what I call the stump pose. The knees were folded in front, with the arms wrapped around the legs. The Bigfoot was doing its best stump impression, but it was too late. I had spotted it. Dave and Samantha described the Yowie as a male Aboriginal teenager. This reminded me of a section in the Nephilim Among Us, where Scott Carpenter was interviewing one of his neighbors who witnessed a Bigfoot in her backyard. On page 66, the witness described the Bigfoot as an it, and then a male teenager African-American wearing a black hoodie. Whether this was a case of misidentification, cognizant bias, or a reluctance to more accurately describe the creature is up for debate. It is understandable that people attempt to rationalize sightings and are remiss to openly admit to seeing a Bigfoot or Yowie out of fear of ridicule and ostracization from family and friends. It seems like Dave and Samantha were cognizant of the fact that they had witnessed something unusual and highly disturbing. Considering their behavior, I'm led to believe that they believed they witnessed something that was not entirely human, but were unwilling to openly acknowledge this detail. The final detail I wanted to discuss was the Yowie rummaging through Dave and Samantha's belongings to steal Polaroid pictures. This is highly unusual behavior, which I have only read about in one other instance. This behavior is consistent with the nature of the Yowie being something greater than merely an animal, but rather a being with significant intelligence, self-actualization, and emotions. We can only speculate as to why this creature wanted to steal the Polaroids. Was it a whimsical sense of fascination and curiosity, or did it have more sinister intentions in mind? It is my opinion that Yowies are like people, in the sense that there are good and bad people in society. We cannot know for sure what this creature had in mind, but the reaction of the group suggested that its conduct was perceived as malicious. The group's hasty departure the next morning speaks volumes about the psychological impact of their encounter. The joy and anticipation they once held had been replaced by a deep-seated fear, a trauma that would forever be etched in their memories. Emily's encounter at Porcupine Gorge serves as a stark reminder that the world is far more complex than we often imagine. It forces us to confront the limitations of our knowledge and the possibility that creatures beyond our current understanding may exist in the depths of the wilderness. While skepticism towards such encounters is understandable, the sheer terror and detail in this account compels us to consider the possibility that the Yowie may be more than just myth. This encounter serves as a call for further investigation and exploration. The Yowie remains shrouded in mystery, and only through dedicated research and open-mindedness can we unravel the truths surrounding its existence and understand its place within our natural world. Thanks for listening to this creepy and allegedly true Bigfoot or Yowie sighting. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. It helps me out a lot. The more likes this video gets, the more YouTube promotes it to new viewers. I would also be very appreciative if you could leave a comment down below. I love to read your comments, and it also helps the video out a lot in the good old YouTube algorithm. Thank you guys for supporting this channel. It means a lot to me, and I couldn't do the work that I do without your viewership. Thanks to those of you who are here. We're now over 1,000 subscribers, and that number keeps going up every day, so I'm very appreciative of it. Thank you all so very much. If you have a story that you would like to submit and potentially have shared in a future episode, be sure to submit it at thelongnightmailbag@gmail.com. I would love to share your stories with the audience for a fresh spook. I'll see you all soon with another creepy video. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, smash that like button, and I'll see you soon with another episode.